Well, I'm here with two-time president of U.S. fencing, Steve Sobel. Of course, he was also NCAA saber champion and many other things. And so tell me, Steve, who was your first teacher of fencing?
My first teacher of fencing was Eddie Lucia at Riverdale Country School. And then I moved from Eddie Lucia to Giorgio Santelli, and later on, after college, from Giorgio Santelli to Sobel.
And tell me, your dad, of course, was the treasurer of U.S. fencing. What years was he the treasurer? Do you remember that? Approximately?
I don't. I guess it was approximately in the 70s. I saw his picture on your display there, but I didn't note the date. But
how did he get into fencing?
Well, he actually, I believe he was the first non-fencer to be elected national officer. He got into fencing as a spectator. He was watching me, and he got known since he came to so many tournaments, and he was a certified public accountant. And so he ultimately took positions as the treasurer of the division, the Metropolitan Division at the time, and was elected national treasurer.
Fabulous. Now tell me, looking back into your life in the fencing as a competitor, how would you describe the way you fenced when you were at Columbia? What was your way of dealing with people in saber?
Well, we had a very interesting saber team. They called me the classicist because I learned the old time parry riposte, and we had another fencer who was the athletic. He kept running at opponents. At that time, the flesh was allowed. And the third one was the fighter. And but my training was all the lovely actions that no longer take place anymore with the electrical saber.
What was your favorite action? Do you remember your favorite move?
Well, I had two favorite moves. One was just a straight parry riposte, but not in the remembered line, but in a different line, or parry 1-2 riposte. And the second was attack into preparation.
Fabulous. Now tell me, do you have any bouts or one single bout in your history that you just remember that beating that one guy or that particular moment?
The answer is yes. When I was a sophomore fencing my first year at Columbia, and I always went down on a Friday night to Sal Santelli. When I went down that Friday night before the Penn meet, which was our big meet, Joe Velarde, who was the coach at that time, told me, "You don't look too well. I think you ought to rest." And I said, "No, I'm feeling fine. I'm going to have to take a fencing lesson." "I don't think that's a good idea," he said. "I think you ought to rest." Okay, so I packed up and I started to walk home. I said, and Joe said, "I didn't tell you to go home. I told you to rest." I said, "Well, where do you want me to rest?" He says, "Well, I want you to go in and watch the Penn team. That's the way you're going to rest tonight." So I watched them, and I saw them fence, but they didn't see me fence. And that was a big difference, because my arch rival in college was Bob Homachek, who I fenced numerous times, but only one time did I beat him 5-0. And that was a Saturday morning when I was a sophomore.
That's fabulous. That's wonderful.
I can remember one other story with Eddie Lucia. When I was in my first year of law school, and I was professional option, so my first year of law school was my last year of college. I thought I was out of shape, and because I hadn't had a time to practice it in my first year of law school, and I was worried whether I would be successful that year. So I go into my first bout against City College, and thinking about all these problems, I ended up losing the bout. And I was convinced at that point that I was out of shape and I couldn't fence this year, until Eddie Lucia came over to me, and he couldn't resist gloating. And what he did is he came over and he said, "I made you as a fencer, and I could make fencers to beat you." And that was a big mistake on his part, because he would have had 2 more bouts. But once he said that, it got me fired up, and I won the next 2 bouts 5-0, 5-0, and then I thought I could fence for the year.
Let me ask you one more question I've got for you. When you're looking back, was there any fencer you admired so much for either how he fenced the reasons he fenced, his behavior, his technique? Was there anyone you just totally admired the most?
Tibor Nilash.
Tell me what you admired most about him.
First, he was classical. Second, he had a wit about him all the time. And at that time, it was before the electric saber. So I was judging one bout, and I was looking his way, whether his opponent hit him, and he made a flesh attack. At that time, the flesh was legal in saber, missed completely, and then he hit on a counteraction. And the referee or the director looked at the two judges for Tibor's fencing, and he said the attack, and they said no. And then he looked over at us, and we said the counterattack. Of course, he hit, so we said yes. And they awarded the touch to Tibor, and Tibor's opponent took off his mask and said, "Tibor, you know you only got that touch on your reputation." And Tibor's response was, "So why don't you go out and get a reputation?"
Well, thank you very much. Steve Sobel, member of the Hall of Fame, Columbia alumnus. Thank you very much, Steve.
And Vice President of the Olympic Committee.
And Vice President of the Olympic Committee. Look, I forgot something, and I didn't earn it myself either. Thank you very much, Steve.
Great job you did last night at the Hall of Fame.
Thank you.